Welcome to the NREM podcast, where we discuss the law for real estate investors. Andy and Sean are both attorneys. Nothing said in this discussion should be considered legal advice. We're simply providing information and education. You should consult with an attorney in your state regarding any specific legal issue that you may have. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, our topic is attorneys, good ones, bad ones, what to look out for, and what to run from. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with my partner, Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, give us a like. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. On YouTube, we're at NREM Podcast. Give us a like. Subscribe to the channel. We would appreciate it. With that, Sean, give us our legal update.
So our legal update today is why you should employ a servicing agent for an agreement for sale or to accept the payments under agreement for sale, or also other states call it a contract deed or a land installment contract. But it's basically an executory contract that you enter into where you basically agree to make payment over time without having fee title, but having full control over the property. And then when you complete the transaction or you complete the payments, at that point, the warranty deed is recorded. So you have the option basically of having a servicing agent, so a third party who receives and disperses the monthly payments or the quarterly payments or whatever payments you've agreed to make under the agreement for sale. Or you can make the payments directly to the seller of the property, or if you're doing a subject to agreement for sale, you can make those payments directly to the existing lender. But I want to talk about why I think it's important to employ a servicing agent, because it's beneficial for both the protection of the seller and the buyer. So for the purposes of protecting the seller of the property, having a servicing agent, at least here in Arizona, allows the seller to complete a non-judicial forfeiture of the property if payments aren't made, meaning they don't have to go into court and pursue a judgment of forfeiture if payments are not being made. The fact that they have a servicer in place allows them to avoid that situation or that scenario and allows them to do forfeiture completely outside of the court system, similar to a trustee sale with a traditional note deed of trust arrangement. If you don't have a servicer in place, then you have to complete the forfeiture through the court system, meaning you have to file a complaint, serve the complaint, allow the buyer an opportunity to answer. If they answer, then you have to file motions, presumably a motion for summary judgment or a motion on the pleadings, depending on how they answer. You then have to eventually obtain your judgment. And then from there, your judgment would give you the ability to, forfeit that interest, or that interest would be forfeited as a result of the judgment. But it's going to be a time-consuming and costly process to go through that versus a forfeiture. The timeframes are anywhere from 30 to 120 days outside of the court system, depending on how much of the agreement's been paid. And, there's a whole formula for that to make that determination. So for the protection of the seller and to allow them to do the non-judicial forfeiture, you should have a servicing agent, but also for the protection of the buyer. And the reason why you want a servicing agent if you're the buyer, number one, you want the payments to be going to a servicing agent, a neutral third party who's creating accountings and understandable ledgers and things like that. So that's number one. Number two, you can deliver the warranty deed to the servicing agent or have the seller deliver the warranty deed to the servicing agent in trust. That way, if you complete all of your payments, then the servicing agent just delivers the original warranty deed to you as the buyer and you can record it. Versus if you're making the payments to the seller directly or to the seller's lender and the seller disappears and now you've completed your performance, but you can't obtain that original warranty deed that you need to record in order to obtain fee title to the property, then you're stuck chasing the seller around. Or if you can't find the seller, you're stuck going into court and quieting the title or obtaining a declaratory judgment action that you've completed your requirements under the agreement. And then you have to wait for that court order, which then effectively gives you title to the property. So for me, the servicing agent is beneficial to both the seller and the buyer, and it is recommended anytime I'm working on an agreement for sale. I want to see my client put a servicing agent in place.
Yeah, and so many investors that get into agreement for sales just make this mistake because they're going cheap on the deal, right? They hear title, well, I don't need that. Easy enough to do on my own. I can go record this agreement for sale. We don't need that. Lo and behold, there is a statutory requirement that if you want this remedy of forfeiture by affidavit, which is of course why they all did it, right? That's why they did it, because they wanted an easy remedy. And lo and behold, the statute doesn't allow it. So just it's an easy one to miss, but so vital, such a vital one to know about. Thank you for that, Sean. With that, we're going to get into our topic today. So today, again, the title of today's program is Attorneys. And we're really talking about attorneys and real estate investors. So attorneys, the good ones, bad ones, what to look for and what to run from. And what we wanted to do is really create a round table here of real estate attorneys. Sean and I are real estate attorneys, but we've had some real estate attorneys on the program and real estate investors to really talk about what works, what doesn't work, what are the pain points, how do investors learn to work with attorneys and vice versa? How can real estate attorneys best learn to work with their clients? So on the show today, we have a number of guests with us that we're really excited that we're willing to be a part of this conversation. Our first guest is Pace Morby. Pace, thanks so much for being on the show with us.
Guys, I just love the comments and I love everything that's going on. The topic is so great. It's interesting when you guys are attorneys, you guys have to learn to speak a completely different language. It's almost like every word you were saying 5 minutes prior was not even in the English language to me 10 years ago. But I realize now, years into real estate investing, how important everything that tip just was. It is so critical how important that was. I'm working with a real estate agent here locally in Arizona. And she says, my client, we can't sell the house. It's been listed for 5 months. I can't sell the house. And I go, no problem. Let me just take over the mortgage sub 2. I'll get your commissions paid. We'll be good. She goes, well, I can't do that. My client's worried about the due on sale clause. I go, no problem. I said, let's do an agreement for sale. And she says, there is no such thing as an agreement for sale in Arizona. And I'm like, oh my gosh, who is your broker? Let's have a conversation. And I wish every agent just heard this prior opening to this podcast. I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Pace. And for those of our listeners who've just today crawled out from under a rock, why don't you give them a brief introduction as to who you are and what you do?
My name is Pace Morby. I used to be a general contractor. My big clients were OfferPad, Zillow, Open Door. Travel around the country. I've done over 7,000 renovations before I went into real estate investing full time. I now have a little over 300 single family doors, all through creative finance, sub 2 seller finance, hybrids, all those types of things. I now have 1,500 multifamily doors. The majority of those have been acquired on seller finance, agreement for sales, contract for deed, bond for deed, even in Pennsylvania. All these executory contracts that people don't even realize are out there. It's actually the majority of the way that I acquire my real estate. And I also, for anybody that cares, my partner Jamil and I are on a television show on A&E. We have 6 years signed with A&E, and could not be more delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Also on the show with us today, we have Logan Fullmer, a former guest on the show. We're so happy to have Logan with us again. Logan, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I had a great time. Last time, when y'all called me back, thought it made a lot of sense. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. Tell our audience, give them a little bit about you and what you do.
So I've been in real estate for about 10 years. I've got a commercial real estate wholesale business, multifamily, under 200 units, typically, a little bit smaller. And I also do a lot of light industrial and then ranch land. Of those same assets, I also buy those. So some get wholesaled, some get purchased. I've got a mortgage note portfolio. And then probably the most exciting business is the distressed business, distressed real estate. When I say distressed real estate, I don't mean like pre-foreclosure. I mean like 10 people suing each other, 65 owners of a property, owners that are gone. You've got title defects that no one even understands what they are. My company takes those and cures the defects through litigation, through affidavits, through any means possible to get them insurable through the underwriters. And that allows me to buy them for literally $0 to, I'd say I spend at max 60 cents on the dollar. So from entry point, there's about a 40 to 90% margin in them. And then I'll either keep it, sell it, whatever. So those are the types of real estate businesses that I do.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being with us, Logan. Last but not least, we have an attorney. We've got to make sure to bring attorneys on last. But we've got Tyler Epstein. Tyler, thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me again. I look forward to it. So I'm an attorney in Texas. I'm not anybody on this podcast or watching attorney, just to clarify that to begin with. But no, I've been an attorney for 5 years. I've got a construction company, heavy equipment, and I do real estate investing as well. Got a few doors, got a ranch land, and then dabble in other mostly easement issues and title airship issues. Dabble in it. We've got 137 heirs on one piece of property right now. And then also I do a lot of pro bono because sometimes these issues come up and they're very simple. They just never found somebody to help with. So instead of trying to do anything, I'm like, why don't you just give me $1,000 at closing? Here's an affidavit. Let's go round up these people and get it taken care of.
Great. Thanks again, Tyler. We appreciate having you. So as we get into this discussion, as you can see, we want to get the perspective from both the real estate investor, from the attorneys, and sometimes like Tyler's perspective is from the perspective of both a real estate investor and an attorney. Let's just start kind of from the beginning. For a viewer that's watching, that's maybe just getting into the space, Pace, Logan, you guys have built up your businesses. You're doing a lot of activity. How many lawyers would you say in your real estate investment career have you had to deal with? And Pace, let's start with you, and then we'll kind of work around everybody.
I like the question, had to deal with. When I wasn't going for referral-based relationship type of contacts with attorneys, I had to deal with probably a dozen before I found Sean St. Clair is actually one of our attorneys that we utilize. We've been working with him for a couple of years. And actually before the show started, Logan was talking about how he looks forward to working with his attorneys. My favorite bill every single month that I receive is my attorney from Sean St. Clair. And I don't have to deal with Sean St. Clair, but every attorney prior to him, I did have to deal with. I would say a dozen before I found the right one.
And how many different, now, as you're dealing with attorneys, I know, and I'm sure you probably deal with more than just real estate attorneys. At where you're at now, how many different types of lawyers would you say you have to deal with on daily, weekly, or,
I'd say we have 5 different types of attorneys. Securities attorneys. We have a Reg CF and a Reg A going on, and some attorneys don't specialize in those types of offerings. And so we also have a Reg D securities attorney. So depending on what capital we're raising for what asset, we'll use a different securities attorney. I have tax attorneys as well. And then I have multiple real estate attorneys. The markets that Sean can't help me in, like North Carolina and other places that I buy, we have an attorney in every single state that we're working with. So we probably have 7 attorneys that we pay on a monthly basis.
Logan, what about you? How many attorneys have you had to deal with?
Yeah, that's a great question. When Pace mentioned about 5, that's about what I deal with right now. For the full 10 years of my real estate career, I've probably retained at least 30 or more. But in the beginning, it was just hiring folks, seeing what, someone would tell me, call this guy, he's good. And it's like a doctor. There are 50 doctors, and you don't want to call a heart doctor for your toe problem or vice versa. So there's a lot of shuffling around. But at this point, there's about 5 of them. One's a business, general business. The rest of them are all real estate. Because within the real estate, there are different facets of that, and you need an expert for the specific ones there. So I deal with about 5 right now.
Now, I think one of the difficulties that a lot of real estate investors and probably just business owners generally run into is as you're growing your business, you're learning, you're failing forward, you're learning what to do, what not to do. And they didn't tell you you'd probably have to learn how to work with professionals, whether they be CPAs or lawyers or other sorts of professionals. But what have been for Pace and Logan, what have been the pain points as you've grown your business, as you've gotten bigger? What have been the common pain points that you've had to learn to deal with over time? Again, let's start with Pace.
I would say that I had a misconception, or I was uneducated in the realm that I should be close to my real estate attorneys. They should know about my business. They should know what's going on. And I think when you're coming up and you don't have attorneys in your family, which I didn't, I'm a blue collar dude. So we fear attorneys. We fear CPAs. We are not educated. We think these are like the scary people that you never want to have a phone call with. And then when I got into my 30s, I realized these people should be some of your very best friends that you rely on. And you can't build a business without them as your foundation. I remember I've been through more CPAs than I've been through attorneys. And it was because I would just go on Google and say, I need help with this. And I would find somebody and I have to go through their process and their flow just to find out 3 months later they couldn't solve the problem I needed. So number one, these people should be your friend. Number two, the biggest thing that I would suggest to people when you're coming in this business, make sure you're getting referrals before you go out and search for stuff. Find people that can do things for you very specifically. That's actually, I went through 5-6 years dealing with attorneys until somebody referred Sean St. Clair to me and it solved all my problems. And I'm like, man, that literally took me 5 years just to ultimately ask somebody for help and a referral.
Logan, what about you? What have been your pain points with professionals, but mainly attorneys as you've grown your business?
Early on, it was kind of similar. I was stumbling through just grabbing somebody and see if it would work, and I wouldn't have the best result. So I would open up the law books. I find these guys reading them. So I'd get subscriptions, buy books, start reading them, start going through Google. And I start to realize there's a lot more to it. So I ended up spending a lot of time learning about the law and how it worked. And it helped me project manage attorneys early on so that I knew what I was talking about. If they were going the right direction, I felt good about it. If they're going the wrong direction, I could rope them back in. But at some point I realized I'm running a real estate business. I'm not trying to be a lawyer. So during that time, I was starting to meet better attorneys. And that really helped a lot. The funny part is I'd get my ass kicked a couple times and I met a great attorney from the opposing counsel. And after that case was done and settled, I ended up hiring them for another case. That's how I met some of the better ones I know today from the opposite side. But I think in my opinion, I think matching is really, really important. In my mind, there are about 4 different kinds of attorneys. And if you match correctly, kind of like you're matching a spouse or a business partner or whatever, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. So I'll tell you about those 4 different kinds, in my opinion. There's the solo guy. He's the neighborhood attorney down the street who hangs his own shingle and might have a paralegal, maybe 1 or 2 partners. Then you have the mid-sized firms, and they've got a decent-sized office. They do some marketing. You hear about them around town. Then the next tranche of attorneys would be like the national firms. They have, 50, 100 people in each office in Chicago, New York, Dallas, Los Angeles, things like that. And then the last tier would be like the star attorneys. They're the ones that you see on TV, the Coens, the Kardashians. I don't know. Those are ones that folks would remember from big news stories. But you have to pick the right one for what you're doing. And if you're always going from the small guy who hangs his shingle, you're not going to get calls back. He's not going to be an expert on anything. He's going to do all these different things. You're going to be a frustrated client. And as I started to understand that, picking the right type of firm for my current project or my current business model made more difference than anything.
I'm curious with any of these pain points that you guys have run into, has your practice been over time to identify the pain point and try to address it with the lawyer, or is the businessman in you, we just got to move on. We can't try to turn somebody into something they're not. We got to find that.
So I actually want to step in on that particular question because it's one of the biggest points. As an attorney, law school teaches you to be risk adverse. And so you try to eliminate all risk. In a business, you cannot be profitable without taking a risk. So inherently, from the get-go, having an attorney that can quantify and qualify your risk and then give you an over and under on, hey, what you're doing has these risks, and this is kind of the flow that you're going to follow, the path of law, and this is, you know, how much capital value at risk are you going to risk, right? Instead of saying you can't do that. So when I say that, there's a lot of times you go to an attorney like, oh, you can't do that. Does it really mean you can't do that, or they just don't specialize, they don't know, they're not willing to take that risk, they just heard it somewhere? And that has been, as an attorney practicing, as an attorney who an investor who's been sued, the hardest part is like, the law is clear here, you just don't like it, you know, and the risk is there, and I've got to take the risk to make the money. You know, you may not be comfortable with risk, but me as a business owner, I have to take that risk, or I need to find a new business.
Yeah, Tyler,
half of the attorneys that I work with, or half the deals that I've done, the attorney would say, don't do that. And I would say, you do the legal work, I'm going to do this deal, you help me get it figured out. Because half of those deals would have never have been done if I would have listened to everything the attorney said. So you're right, Tyler, you've got to balance the businessman in you with the advice.
Yeah, I want to jump in here on that as well. In Pace has mentioned, we work with each other, and I'm fortunate enough to serve as his counsel on a number of matters. And in that process, you know, we're working up a lot of creative finance structures, transactions, those types of things. And as a result, I'm always being contacted by folks who, you know, know me through Pace, or just, you know that I do creative financing work, saying, oh, I tried to do this transaction in this state, and the attorney just told me it's flat out illegal. And it's like, no, it's not illegal. Especially, you know, on subject to, you got to review the documents and things like that. And, you know, just because something gives a lender a right, i.e. the due on sale clause, doesn't mean it's illegal. But to your point, Tyler, attorneys are just so risk adverse, and they're not willing to do the dirty work of one of two things. One, sitting down with the client and saying, okay, here's what you're doing, and here are the potential consequences of doing that. Are you willing to move forward? And maybe documenting it to cover yourself by an email or a writing of some sort saying, I advised you of these consequences, you know, you've agreed to move forward. Now, once again, I won't, most attorneys will not prepare something that's going to result in some form of illegal activity, right? And you shouldn't. And so I want to just have that caveat. But there are times where, you know, maybe it is, and we learned this in law school, actually, in contracts. There are times where it's better to breach a contract than to adhere to it. And you have to do the financial analysis of what that means and what that looks like. And so, you know, going through and saying, okay, here are the consequences. Here are the consequences of filing that lawsuit. Here's the consequences of defending that lawsuit. Here's what that looks like going forward. And so I've advised you of the risks, and we're going to move forward based upon, you know, your instructions. Or number two is, just because something initially doesn't seem like it can be accomplished, maybe another structure can accomplish the same thing and avoid, you know, the consequences that exist for doing it the other way. And so there are a number of ways to structure transactions, to structure agreements, to, you know, bring them into compliance when otherwise, you know, they wouldn't be. I mean, that's what tax attorneys do all the time, right? I mean, they figure out ways to, you know, maneuver and work around the tax code to provide those types of protections. Tyler, you raise your hand.
That is the difference between a good and a bad attorney, or your attorney and the next guy's attorney, is the fact that somebody's willing to take what you're saying and read literally what the law and or the case law says. Because initially, a lot of times somebody will come with me with a problem, be like, I'm like, hold on. I'm not familiar with that statutory code, or I'm not familiar with exactly that, but I need you to outline the facts as you know them, and I'm going to apply the facts as directly of what you tell me into the law. But I've got to go read that verbatim, word for word, comma for comma, so that I know what it says. And if you ever come to an attorney that can fire from the hip and say, oh, you can't do that, they clearly haven't read, because most times there's rules around it, or they've just been told that it's risky, and so like they're like no, but that's not being a counselor, that's not being an advisor, that's just being risk adverse instead of actually doing the due diligence to understand what you're saying no to.
Yeah, it's actually just being lazy.
That's exactly what my thought is on all this stuff, is that we run into so many attorneys nationwide that the immediate reaction to, let's say, a sub-2 deal, even seller finance, which is surprising to me, you get people that say, sorry, an agreement for sale or a land contract or whatever these things are, that's illegal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience. And they've been in business 20 years, right? To Logan's point, right? They were a jack of all trades. By the way, I just became friends with Logan, like on this podcast. We've never spoken, but him and I are going to hang out a whole bunch after this. What I love about somebody like a Sean is that I'll come to Sean with something of, hey, I want to try and create this. And Sean will go, perfect. Let me go do the research on how to make this work. And he brings some amazing solution to the table. And you can see in the comments right now, somebody just made a comment. They said 99.9% of the time there is a workaround. You just have to find out what it is. To Sean's point about tax law, we just have to maneuver and change the paperwork to make it work. And when you get an attorney that's willing to do that, then all day long I'm hiring them. So the original question from Andy was, if you run into an attorney that's basically giving you friction in a transaction, what do you do? Do you continue forward with that transaction, or do you bail? Well, what do I, if I hire a landscaper that comes over and they show up with nothing, no lawnmower, no weed whacker, no nothing, am I going to let them continue to work on my yard? No. I'm saying, man, what are you doing here? I'll go take my time and energy and my gamble on finding the next person. So my suggestion for people in the audience is, the second you meet somebody that is not creative, is not going to work with you to find the solution, get a referral. I mean, Sean, you've got one of the greatest Facebook groups on the planet. One of the greatest ideas around attorneys is finding attorneys nationwide that are creative in their contract approach. Go to a Facebook group like that and find a referral for somebody in your state instead of going through Google and trying to find the wrong person.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I have found to be the case, and I'd like to explore this a little bit, Pace and Logan and Tyler, in that in networking in the real estate investor space, it really is not just a tight group, but an exploratory group looking for partners to meet in a variety of different areas, finding private capital, finding other professionals, finding other investment partners. Do you think, looking back at your early real estate investor self, do you think this is kind of one of the biggest mistakes maybe young investors make, which is just running to Google and relying on the first real estate lawyer that pops up, instead of hitting the networking events, talking with those who have done it and have worked in that space? What are your thoughts?
I'm gonna actually take this one as I've only been in the real estate game for 5 years, so I'm the newest dude on the block here. And as an attorney, I actually, inexperienced, young baby attorney dealing with some stuff, and so I went and sat down with a real estate attorney, and within 30 minutes, I'm like, that none of this makes any sense to me, because I literally just sat through property law, property 2, and I read this case, and I've got the stat, and so what I realized right then is if I was going to do this, I had to educate myself, and then when I asked questions, I needed to be better, because a lot of the advice, just because somebody has a bar card, does not mean that they are an advisor. That just means that they cross the lowest hurdle possible, and then, as everybody knows, the law splinters, and they just didn't. They're focused as a generalist, or they're focused over here, and they're not focused on you. And that's something else to take into it when you're dealing with attorneys. They're only doing this for the money. They're not doing this because they really, really like you. At the end of the day, they got bills to pay. They got student loans. They've got kids. They've got to take your money. And so the issue being is, spend a little money up front to get their time. And if they're not willing to give you the time, or you can't get a call back, you need to go somewhere else, because they're overworked. They're not going to give you any attention, and you're going to end up getting in a bind. And that's personal experience.
I agree with that, definitely. But something that we chatted about before this is becoming a really good client influences that considerably. You want to find somebody that you think has the right answers and you think they're experienced and all those things. But when you're handling your invoicing immediately, when you're responding to their emails and their calls, and you're being a reasonable person, or while you're dealing with the case, or if you're being unreasonable but it's intentional, hey, I know this is not going to really work, but my goal to in this part of the litigation is strategic. It's to be a battering ram and to just burn through some things and some time and some money to wear people out so we can get closer to a settlement. Being a smart client helps you get the attention of a better attorney, and they're more willing to work with you and do what you like and work harder for you.
Agreed, 100%. I love that so much. And we had an invoice, I don't know, probably a year ago that Sean sent us, and it was split between two companies that I own. One I have a partner on, and the other one I don't have a partner on. And the invoice basically falls between the cracks because one person says, "Oh, that's not our responsibility." The other one says it's not ours. The second I found out about that, I called the front desk girl. I apologized. Called the invoicing gal. Apologized. Paid it the second it was due, or the second I found out what was going on. Pay your attorneys, guys. They're running a business, right? And you want them to run a successful business. And you actually want to give your attorney referrals. You want them to be busy, 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 and remember your name. So when your phone call comes in or an email from you comes across, they want to take care of your email or your phone call first.
Yeah, it's my opinion that your attorney a lot of times is the hurdle to your next tranche of profit payout. And when folks argue with the billing invoicing structure, I got two of them right here. This month, one of them is $12,000. The other one's $22,000. And this is several of the attorney bills. When you look at this is page one of like 3 pages. I mean, they're billing a quarter of an hour, a tenth of an hour. It's tiny. And a lot of folks look at that and they get angry and they argue and they talk a bunch of whatever. And you have to be mindful of that because these guys they've been working for 5, 10, 20 years or whatever to build a skill that they've got to be able to invoice for. They've got to make a living. And if they only bill for 4 hours of their day, but they're working 8, how do they make a living? All they have is the time, and there's no scope of work in legal work at all, really. So they just have to bill you for the time. And the quicker a client gets over that and understands, I just have to pay this dude what it's worth, or I'm in the wrong field, then you start to become that better client.
And what's interesting, Logan, what you made me think kind of from a lawyer's perspective is what can drive up some of those costs are, for better or worse, a lack of trust in the lawyer. And what I mean by that is, look, you've hired this professional because you at least believe they're good at what they do and you need guidance through whatever legal situation that they're doing. But oftentimes, businessmen and women are good at what they do, and they have an ego and they think they know a lot of stuff, and they probably do know a lot of stuff. But sometimes it's hard, I think, for clients to let go and to let a lawyer do what you're paying them to do, which is drive the ship. And when that lawyer is billing hourly and driving that up, and there's a back and forth as to how this is going to do or who's kind of pushing the case, some of that I think can do that now, or can be the cause of that. Now the question is, at what point do you get to that relationship with a lawyer to where you can have that trust to know that, look, this is going to cost money, but they're not in it just to bill this for no apparent reason. There's a strategy in place.
I think that's common in the game. So for example, when you meet my wife, when I met her, the first time or two we date, there's no trust. You don't even know the person. You're building that. And now at this point, it's a whole different ballgame. Well, the attorneys I've been working with for 5 years now, it's a whole different ballgame. There's no more of the micromanaging. There's no more of the watching. We have status meetings and strategy meetings every week or so, and that's it. And they do their thing. So I think that's built with time.
Speaking of that, as an attorney, that hires an attorney, I think my attorney bills for my outside counsel for some of my stuff this month was like 33 or 34,000, right? Like, not bragging, that it breaks my heart, but they're doing their job. But the only thing that we're doing right now is literally in litigation against counsel. 2 cases. Counsel is insane. Neither one of these cases should have gotten past the 60-day mark, to be honest, but they both have. And so what should have been a $10,000 to $20,000 bill total is now 5 figures each in both sides. And so we're running at this, and all we're talking about is strategy and rabbit holes. Hey, this is a rabbit hole. Don't even worry about that, right? Like, let's just focus on the important things, and we'll worry about to focus their time and to not get into the mud raking contest, because as you go down the intelligence threshold on legal counsel in litigation, they start throwing stuff, trying to muddy the water as much as possible, driving up all the costs, and gets confusing. And if you try to address every item without any kind of project management over your counsel, because they're doing the best they can, to represent you, especially newly, and you don't really know what's going on, your bills are going to be scary. Now, like with my bill, I sent them the check the day it came in because I knew exactly what they were doing, because we had those status meetings and those strategy meetings to understand the path forward. And as soon as we get off of this, I've got a conference call with them over the same thing.
Well, and I wanted to jump in on that. And, I try to like all of my clients and appreciate and value all of my clients, but some are harder to work with than others. And a lot of times clients don't appreciate the fact that maybe they're not your only client, and, you're working on other things. And, I've had to have those hard conversations with clients where I've said, okay, they've given me a project. I said, and I only do transactional work. I don't do any litigation. So I've said, okay, when do you need this by? And they say, oh, if I can get it in a week, for example. Okay, I'll deliver it to you. And I tell them the day of the following week that I'm going to deliver the project to them. And literally the next day or 2 days later, I'm getting an email. Hey, what's the status? I'm like, no. So I've, had to have that call and say, look, if I tell you I'm going to get it to you on that date, I'm going to get it to you. But, I don't have the time to respond to your email asking what the status is when you knew that that's what we agreed to, and that was the due date. So that's one thing that clients can understand and appreciate. And like you guys said, it takes time for that comfort level to develop. Most of the time that was new clients who have not worked with me before. And so maybe they've been burned by attorneys in the past. So they feel like they need to ride me to make sure that the project is completed in a timely manner. And that way I don't fall off their radar. But I've had to have those conversations saying, I might not be your attorney if you're going to be sending me these types of emails, that type of thing. So, from a client's perspective, I think it's important to value that attorney's time and know that, hey, sometimes you just get in bad cases where opposing counsel or even the court is constantly reaching out to you and communicating with you. And when you're in litigation, that's time, and that goes on out on an invoice. Or if you're in a transaction and the attorney's billing a flat fee, that attorney is not going to be thrilled if you're sending emails throughout the course of the project when you've given deadlines, asking for status updates and things like that. So it is important, like, Logan, all three of you were saying, to really just understand and appreciate, the attorney time and know what the value that they're providing, and just let the attorneys do their jobs.
So speaking of that, for what to look for and what to run from, I fired pro bono clients that I was representing for free. I'm like, I don't represent, like, no, we're done here, because you're not, I'm trying to help you, and you're not even giving me the ability, you're not appreciating anything, and I'm just trying to do it for free. Somebody brings me an issue, right? And I look at it, and if you can't find an attorney that's, after you pay them, like you need a consulting fee at least. If they don't charge a consulting fee, generally, unless you know them, they're probably they don't have enough work to be doing it. Say that timidly a little bit, but at the same time, they should be able to give you an outline on kind of the gist of what they think can happen, what the way the law should overarchingly flow, and how much approximately maybe it should cost or how long it should take. Same thing with litigation. You bring them a client, like, okay, based on your facts, the overarching theme of the law is this. I've got to do some research, but you're going to be spending 10 to 20, but that's if everything goes smoothly, If they can't give you some kind of, not from the hip necessarily, but some kind of overarching guidance, then they're probably not looking out what's best for you. Because any of my clients, I tell them going in, listen, you've got $15,000 at stake. You're going to spend that before we ever get there. Just take the L and move on, or, hey, listen, it's a pride thing. If you want to keep writing these checks, we can keep going. But understanding what that looks like so that the client goes in eyes wide open when they start writing those checks as well is necessary on the attorney's part.
That's a big deal for us, like in the real estate space, right? Let's say that I lock up a contract with a seller directly, and we open escrow. I've got a 45-day close to close that property, and along comes another investor behind me, offers $1,000, $10,000 more to the homeowner, locks up another contract, right? If I'm going to buy that property, put it in my portfolio, great. I'm going to fight that all day long. I'm going to spend that money because I saw the deal long-term and I'm okay with a long-term return. But if I'm just simply assigning that contract to another investor and I'm going to make $5,000 on the assignment or $10,000 on the assignment, I need to know that going and fighting the seller and maybe going after like a specific performance lawsuit with the seller is going to cost me more money than anything I stand to make. And that is what's great about working with Sean. Sean's been able to say, well, you got to kind of weigh the benefits here. So when you have an attorney that's telling you that before you stroke a check, that's an attorney you run towards. That's an attorney you want to work with because they're watching your pocket before they ever bill you any time. And the other ones that just say, no problem, we'll get started on this, send me a retainer, we'll get going on it without a timeline, without an expectation of kind of a window of where it kind of should be based on previous experience and where it should end up costing based on previous experience, all things held constant. Those are the attorneys you want to stay away from.
Pace, do you, and this can is really also a question for everybody as well, but how short or long is that leash that you give to the new lawyer? So I guess what I'm getting at too is kind of what's your onboarding process? You've gotten a great referral, somebody you work with at events is like, hey, this is the guy for you. What are kind of the next metrics you want to see over a course, and how short is that leash before you pull it if it's not working?
This is what's fun about my relationship with Sean. We've been working together for years. I don't talk to Sean that often unless him and I are collaborating on content with my students or something on YouTube. He's working with my team or his team is working with my team. So him and I are always just on a friendly basis, which is awesome. But in the very beginning, my personality is different than maybe somebody else's. My personality is I'm going to trust you until you show me otherwise. I'm not going to have a metrics. I'm not going to have something to measure. You're going to show me right out of the gate. It's kind of like, hey, when you meet a brand new friend, you guys are, go out for a burger and whatever else. How are you measuring whether this is a good guy or not a good guy? There's a feeling right out of the gate. I'd rather go off a feeling than anything else. And for me, the metric is, did you charge me $12,000 to do something that should have been, $2,000? There's a pretty big discrepancy there. That's where I've had attorneys in the past that took 2 months longer than they said, charged 4 times more than they said they were going to, and there was no reasonable expectation for it, explanation for it. When you find a good attorney, my personality says, you have my trust until you show me otherwise. And that's just me. Other people that might have more of an engineer mindset, they're going to say, okay, I want to know all the expectations. I want to read all the documents. I have no time for that. So my personality says, you have my trust until you don't.
So it's safe to say you place a lot of capital on the referrals that you get to attorneys and who you're
100%. I will never, ever hire another attorney without a referral.
Logan, what about you?
I agree completely in that. Early on, I started as a technician, researching, backing up, spending a lot of time in the trenches. And at this point, I'm running a business that I can't do that. So it's really similar. I mean, I've got a friendly basis with the attorneys I work with now, and the guys are dealing with most of the work. But it's either referral based or someone's been on the other side that I've seen how they perform, and I was incredibly impressed. And when you do that, I really don't have a runway issue because they're at this point performing.
Now, Tyler's a guy who's, got a little bit of both. He's a lawyer, so he's got the legal side of it, but he's also has the real estate investor side of it. How important, or is it important at all, Pace and Logan, for you to find somebody who is a real estate investor and also an attorney?
100%. It's the same thing with CPA. I've got a really good buddy of mine here. I won't say his name. He was a guy, you know how it is. Like when you're coming up in the real estate world, you see these guys that are kind of like the legends of the real estate world in your local geographical area. And I saw one of these guys and I go, man, I want to be this guy one day. This is probably 15 years ago. And it's crazy to me how many CPAs I went through to find the right CPA and to figure out what bonus depreciation is and cost segregation and these types of things that we utilize in real estate. I get a text message from him last week. This is 15 years of me idolizing him. And he says, hey man, I just figured out what cost segregation is. Are you guys using cost segregation? I go, that's the most rudimentary, basic thing your CPA should have told you like years ago. What's going on over there? He goes, well, I have a CPA charging me $50,000 a quarter to consult with me. He's never brought up cost segregation or any of these things. I go, I pay my guy $350 a month and he knows more than your guy at 50 grand a quarter. It's so for me, referral all day long. And more importantly, I want to know that the CPA or the attorney are in the business that I need their help in. They understand it, or in the very least, maybe they retired from it, or in the very, very least, they have other very significant clients that are people I'm trying to be. Because that's the cool thing about an experienced attorney is that I'm not just getting their experience, I'm getting the experience of all the big real estate investors that I'm aspiring to become. I want that attorney. All day long, I want that attorney.
That is the deference to authority that people rely on all day long because somebody has the degrees, the title, the et cetera. And so automatically that person must just be smart. That, you know, like they've got the degree, the difference, that they're the authority. I mean, how many people started a YouTube over whatever, a channel over whatever, and became the authority because of marketing, right? Like, yeah. So just because somebody has the quote unquote qualifications, that's the bare minimum. That does not mean they know what they're talking about or should be your advisor, and nor just because somebody's an attorney and was speaking at an event or even me on this or anybody, right, means that what the advice they were giving you applies to your situation. You need to have somebody that has a more, you know, like Pace and Sean have. You know, me and Logan are good friends. He'll send me a text message, you know, at 9:30 at night. Hey, can I do this on a conservative easement? I'm like, hell, I don't know. It's 9:30, you know, but at the same time, I'm focusing on it. I'm going to go do some research, at least cursory, so that we can focus and get headed a direction, right? That is something that you're going to have to build and have, and that resource there, you know, is personally invaluable because of the same, even though Logan's not an attorney, I will turn around and reach out and ask him, hey, have you seen this before? Because he's operating in this space. He's just as much a subject matter expert, if you will, as the guy down the road that hung his shingle as an attorney, right? Like he has more practical experience than, you know, Bob Smith, attorney at law on the corner of Main Street.
Sure. I want to pose this to begin with Tyler and Sean, the lawyers in the room, and then we'll hear from Pace and Logan. But we've been hearing really since we graduated law school that one of the chief complaints that we hear about at the state bar level and then the American Bar Association is attorney-client contact or communication with the client, or the complaint is the lack thereof of communication with the client. Tyler, how important has it been for your clients in the real estate investment space to have extended access to you? So good access, the ability to communicate with you and get a hold of you.
Well, I mean, it's extremely important, and it's one of the reasons I don't take on a whole lot of clients. I'll try to help and assist in any way I can for a lot of people. For, you know, hey, I'll just give you some, you know, generalized stuff and help you along your way. But if it gets to be where it's going to take up more of my time capacity than I have to give you to focus on it, then I'm going to refer it out, or, you know, try to find somebody else that can manage it. But at the same time, without that access, there is no relationship. And without that relationship, there is no way to grow. And that goes both ways, because, I mean, I may partner with them on a deal later. And so it kind of is, you have to have that trust, you have to have that respect, and you have to have a very tight relationship because of some of the issues that we have in the American Bar Association with like the attorney-client privilege and crossing lines. So that's why I'm very selective on my clients. I will fire clients quickly for, you know, trying to capitalize on my time or, you know, not taking advice. If you ask me for advice and I'm giving you advice and then you literally just just do what you want to do anyway. I'm not your maid. I'm not here just to clean up after you. I don't want to just take your money. I want to be successful, right? So taking a case or taking something just because you can make money from it is not something I can do personally, because I'm like, I don't, that's not fun for me. I want to win. I don't want to, you just went out here and shot yourself in the foot. Go to the doctor, you know, like, I mean, I'm not here to try to clean up your mess on the backside. Like, you know, I'm not your mother. I tried to prevent this. It didn't happen. So I would say the other part is expectations. You know, me and Logan are really good friends. He can call me at 10 o'clock at night. I'll answer the phone and see what's up. If I don't know you, but from Facebook, I'm not answering you at 10 o'clock at night, man. Like, I'm just
You know what
not
else I'll
doing
say
it.
though is, Tyler, you have probably more bandwidth than anybody I know. So for a person like you to be very engaged and do a good job of communication, that's unique. Most attorneys that aren't working with a really big firm can't communicate like you can. And one of the ways that I've been able to get past that is, in most of my cases now, I'll hire bigger firms. And, you know, one of the leads or partners will have, you know, half a dozen associates under him. And I don't have a problem with communication with them. They've got an associate on one of my projects. I'm getting 10 emails nonstop from him, calls, text messages. I'm hearing from him because he's working on my case. Now he's running the tab, and there's no doubt about that. But those cases can bear that cost, and those projects definitely can stomach that. So I don't have a problem with communication. But when you're dealing with a little bit smaller firm and folks that don't have a lot of assistance, you may not hear from that attorney for weeks and months. If I were to guess, Andy and Sean, the attorney-client communication problems that are going up to the bar level for complaints, I would be willing to bet they're most commonly with firms that are less than 20 attorney or 20 head count. I bet.
Probably smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our firm has 8 attorneys. So we're pushing that mid-level, mid-size, you know, firm. I operate a little bit differently with my communications. So there are a few select clients that have my cell phone, Pace being one of them. But most of the time, those clients don't abuse it. But, you know, if they ever need to get a hold of me, it's an emergency, they can call me on my cell phone. I do not like email because honestly, I get so many emails that I could literally do email all day and never draft a document at all. And so I try to kind of bulk my emails and do them all at once, generally over the weekend. When I have some spare time, I'll do those. But I do send, as part of the email that goes out, you know, a response saying, hey, email's not the best way for you to communicate with me. I return all of my voicemails within 24 hours. And then I also put on there, if it's an emergency and you need to get a hold of me, here's the number to call. And you just tell them it's an emergency and my office will track me down and you will get a hold of me in short order. So that's kind of the way I operate, to try to, you know, do my best to be able to still be productive, getting, you know, accomplishing legal work for my clients, as I try to basically push everyone into a funnel of leaving me a voicemail. So, you know, if you really want to talk to me, pick up that phone, leave me a voicemail. I'll return that call generally within 24 hours. And then if it's an emergency, you have our direct line and they will get a hold of me. They will call my cell phone. They will message me, you know, text me, call me on, we use Microsoft Teams. They'll reach out there and, you know, absent me being, you know, somewhere indisposed where I just can't, you know, respond or pick up my cell phone, they will have me on the line and I will be communicating in short order. So that's kind of how I try my best to operate, without being completely unavailable. So I could just bury my head in the documents I'm drafting. You know, I try to make myself available, but I honestly, I'm probably, for our firm, I'm not the most available. There's other attorneys, like Logan said, you know, associates and others who are going to be much more available. But for certain clients, I'm readily available. They have my cell phone. They can call me.
I prefer the way you communicate, to be honest, Sean. It's interesting. The majority of the time, the email I get from you is, I'll send you an email and I get a reply back every single time. And it is, if you're waiting for a reply on my email, just so you know, I only answer my email during these times.
Mm-hmm.
So you're constantly setting an upfront contract with every one of your clients and you're setting that expectation, which I respect, and my team respects it as well. And we let you do your thing as you should be. And then when you're time blocking and you're getting to our things, we know you're dedicated to our thing just as much as you were dedicated to the thing before it. So we actually love the way that you communicate. And when you say I'm unavailable, you shouldn't be available. You should be working on other things, and you should only be available when you've time blocked it. So we like it.
Good. Glad to hear that. Thank you.
Pace and Logan, what are ways that lawyers, whether they're experienced getting into the space, whatever, what are ways they can be proactive in finding ways to add value to your business when you've engaged them?
The thing that Sean's done a really phenomenal job at is that most attorneys don't want to be seen. They want to be like hunkered down in their office. Sean's done a great job getting out at real estate meetups, meeting some of my friends, meeting my students. He bumps into some of my sellers. He doesn't even know it. Sean adds credibility to me to a level where when people see like a seller, let's say somebody I'm working I've got a big $16 million apartment complex that I'm working up in Illinois right now, agreement for sale. It was not agreement for sale, land contract up there. And the seller looks on my YouTube and saw Sean and I doing something on there, and just seeing the fact that I have an attorney willing to come on a Zoom and seeing my attorney's personality, it speaks volumes that you just can't convey otherwise. And so if you're an attorney, help get in front of your business owners. They're all trying to market. They're all trying to be on podcasts. They're all trying to be on Instagram. Help your clients by adding credibility to the front end of their marketing mechanism. Sean has done, Sean, I don't even know what Sean's billed me, but multiply that by 10. That's how much money he's made me by just adding value to my business.
Logan, what about you? What are proactive ways you've seen or think lawyers could take proactive steps to add value to your business?
I think Pace made a good point, the credibility part. As I built a relationship and a friendship with the top group of them that I work with, I carbon copy them on emails when I'm making really important offers, or if there's communication that may get really nasty, we go on ahead and include them on that, and they have a really good understanding that they're going to be on a lot of emails that they don't need to deal with, but it's just there kind of as a nice placeholder and credibility thing. We also, in our office, we spend a lot of time letting counterparties, maybe buyers or sellers that are on the opposite side of the table with us, know that they can contact our attorney. They can ask credibility questions about us. They can even get questions answered. Although the attorney represents us, they can still answer matters of fact, I guess you could say. So we spend a lot of time doing that soft touch work, I guess, and it adds a lot of stability to us, I feel like. So I think the attorney has to be open to do that, because unless they're really open and willing to do that, they're just going to say, that's not my core business. But what that really is doing is cultivating my business, which means I can spend $20,000 a month with that lawyer or $10,000 a month with that lawyer and really build out with them.
So Pace brought up a good point, and I wanted to touch on that. So we will have some attorneys who are either new to the investor space or regularly work with investors who are going to watch this podcast. And Logan, and then I'll turn it over to Pace and Tyler to answer as well. But going out to networking events and meetups, I know I try to go to at least 2 a month here locally with different investors and companies that put them on. But I also know there's, large national events that could be very educational and beneficial to attorneys who are either wanting to enter this space, who are in the space already. Do you have any suggestions, coming up 2023 here of, different national events that you think would be beneficial and educational for attorneys who are wanting to work within this space?
I got a great suggestion on that. So Sean, I was just on the phone with my team this morning, and your name was brought up multiple times. What I'm planning on doing is doing continued education for real estate agents and brokers in all 50 states regarding agreements for sale, executory contracts, sub-2, seller finance, wraparound mortgages, all that kind of stuff, and actually adding it to their ability to get a credit for taking a class. And I go, Sean St. Clair, he's the guy. Let's get Sean. Let's get Scott Horn. Let's get a couple of these guys together. Let's put a room together of agents, and let's create a curriculum that we can spread nationwide. That is a wonderful platform that you can get on. Any attorney can do those types of things. I would say this year I traveled to over 50 stages, averaging 1,000 people in the audience on every single stage. There is no shortage of big stages you can get on. And Sean, anytime you want to come with me, everybody would be happy to have you there. I would love to see more attorneys in the real estate space getting on the stages rather than the Lamborghini guys talking about, oh, you can make 3 calls and get a Lamborghini pop up out of your cell phone. We need more attorneys on the stages showing people, like, there's a comment right here that people say, I'm afraid of attorneys. There's real estate investors that are afraid of attorneys. It should be the opposite. They should be excited about building a relationship. And the reason being is I feel like the attorneys have not made a wonderful approach into that space as they should have. The opportunity is endless.
Very cool. Yeah. No, I'm down. I'm anytime.
I know you are. That's the
just
thing,
let me
Sean.
know.
That's
We're
what
good.
shows you. That shows so much value for me. I don't even have to call you. I call my team and go, Sean, I guarantee Sean's down. And we just start creating the curriculum. And then I go, let's call Sean in a couple of weeks when we have something to show him, because I know the answer is not no. The answer is like, let's make it happen. Let me add my own spice to it and let me add value.
So sorry to interrupt. I'm actually fixing to have to step off. I've actually got a strategy camp meeting with my attorneys over a hearing that we have on Thursday. So relevant to this, I have to step off and spend money. The one thing I was going to say to Pace's comment on the continuing education, I'm working with a surveyor right now to create continuing education for real estate agents and developers and surveyors. Because as you're developing properties and rural areas and whatnot, there's a lot of issues that come up, and most people can't read a title commitment. They can't read the plat, and they don't know how the law all applies. So I'm working on that specifically because for whatever reason, those things have been hitting me in the chest with a lot of people not understanding how those things interlock. So that's, as Pace's comment, I mean, it's not a bad idea. I honestly don't like being on stage that much. I don't like appearing on podcasts that much. I enjoy the conversation. I just don't, it's like, I really do enjoy this conversation. So I like more of a roundtable feel, I guess, than I would say a broader audience type thing. Because I mean, I learn something every day. I learn, going to events, I learn. On that note, if there's any questions for me, I mean, and guys, anybody that wants to reach out here, I'm not hard to find on the interwebs. I will try to help and answer questions, at least give you some guidance and maybe a referral if I can't handle it or don't know the specific topic. Yeah,
Tyler, before you cut out, just tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, man. Facebook's generally the easiest. The other channels, I don't necessarily know. I have a Twitter. I don't know what my handle is. I haven't touched that in a long time, but like Facebook is the easiest. Just reach out and you can get a hold of me somewhere on Facebook, pretty much. Tyler Epstein, spelled just like Jeffrey's last name, and no, I'm not related.
All right. Thanks so much, Tyler. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Logan, what about you as to Sean's question? Are there particular events or meetup spaces that you've been a part of or will be a part of that you think are good opportunities for lawyers to consider?
I'm listening here. Actually, I've used a lot of social media, Instagram and Facebook, to penetrate my local markets. And just recently I've realized there's more out there. So I've not spent a lot of time in the bigger groups. So that's an initiative that I've got for 2023. So I'm listening to answer that question too.
Sure.
Well, Pace, I just wanted to jump on board. And my admin staff may hate me for saying this, but our firm owns a real estate school here in Arizona. So to the extent we want to collaborate and put something together, we already have everything up and running from an admin perspective to create some courses for credit for real estate agents in Arizona. So I'm happy to offer that to your team and see what we can do to do some stuff.
Wow. That'd be great. And I'd love to have your face on the other stuff in the other states as well, especially in Atlanta. That's our next state, which I know you guys are licensed in as well. So that'll be really fun to collaborate on all that.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Well, Pace and Logan, we really appreciate your time here. We know you guys are both very busy, and we're just honored that you took the opportunity to talk to us and our listeners about how we can be better lawyers and how we can work to enhance your business. While you're here, starting with Pace, why don't you just tell our listeners where they can find you?
You can find me hanging out with Logan because Logan's my new homie and doing deals with Logan. But guys, go to my YouTube channel, just Pace Morby on YouTube, and you can learn some stuff over there.
Awesome.
And Logan, where can our listeners find you?
Well, actually, I'm headed out to Phoenix to go see my buddy Jesse out there soon, so I guess I will get to catch up with Pace. But if you go to Facebook, Logan Fullmer, and then on Instagram, it's The Real Estate Junkie.
Awesome.
Well, there's a dual meaning to that for my whole life, from real estate to everything else, but that's my real estate handle.
All right, an opportunity to have a sit down with Logan, figure out more about that name. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us. Look forward to doing it again. We'll see you guys next time. With that, that is our episode for today. Join us next week. We're talking about money doesn't come easy, strategies for landing hard money loans and dealing with the lender. We're going to have our guest, Andrew Bang. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a good day, everyone.